Good morning. I'm John Arterton, the Director of Music at St. Petersburg's Unitarian Universalist Church. It's my pleasure to welcome you this morning. The Reverend Jack Donovan will be back with us next Sunday. Whoever you are welcome here. Whatever your race, your age, your class, your physical or intellectual ability, you are welcome here. Whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, you are welcome here. However you vote, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. We're delighted to be joined this morning by today's speaker, the Reverend Nan White. She is a minister emerita of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Beaufort, South Carolina, where she served for 15 years. During her many years of ministry, she has served in various leadership positions with the UUA as a member of the General Assembly Planning Committee, the Targeted Ministry Program, and the UU Ministers Association. She and her wife, Sam, moved here to St. Petersburg a year ago. We light our chalice now in harmony with over 1,000 other UU congregations around the world. It serves as a symbol of the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. Please join me in our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hello, I'm Ann Seidel.
Hello, and I'm Fred Seidel.
Annie Hall.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna
Moving with the flow, I wonder in silence. I am still. Thoughts flurry like snow in Maine. The pads of my feet feel the earth beneath. I wander. Moving amongst the plains of the Midwest, fingertips sense the wheat and barley. I am wind. My hair flows with the gusts. Surround me, for I am not lost. I wander. I wonder what the ocean looks like in the deep, flowing beneath the sea, bathed in the oceanic tub reaching a dozen feet. I am water, for I ebb and I flow, chop wood as I go. I wander. For I wonder why I wander if I am not lost. I explore with the child's perspective, brave like I am learning how to walk. I wonder, for I am not lost. For faith is strong in knowing I am not. To wander, I wonder, how else would I be? To explore, to not flow like the sea? To be still but not wonder, I ponder. Don't we all sonder? Path seems to be straight ahead. Curious George, we are wanderers instead. I am still when I need to be still. I flow when I need to flow. I breathe as I need to breathe because to wander, I wonder if I am free. To wander, I wonder who is me. To wonder, I wander with the earth beneath my feet. Wonder. A feeling of surprise mingled with admiration caused by something beautiful, unexpected, unfamiliar, or inexplicable. Wander. Move or walk in a leisurely, casual, or aimless way. Thank you.
Before we continue, we have a few announcements. Please join John Motter this afternoon, December 13th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. as he cures Karen White's gumbo phobia. Don't let gumbo rue your life. John will show you how to make a delicious gumbo base that allows for endless variations. Fun fact, John worked at the New Orleans Cafe in Washington, D.C. back in the 80s. Directions for joining this Zoom meeting will appear on screen at the close of today's service. If you'd like to learn more about our church, we hope you'll visit our website at uustpete.org. That's uustpete.org. Among other things, you'll find information about signing up for our weekly newsletter. Also, you're welcome to call or email Pastor Jack at any time. His contact information will show on the screen at the end of today's service as well. If you have a particular personal joy or concern to share today, please type it into the comment column on the right of your screen. Or you might share it during our coffee hour check-in after the service. And you are welcome to send joys or concerns to Pastor Jack for sharing aloud at next Sunday's service. To keep our congregation thriving, may we remember our connections to one another, and let us not forget our contributions to support the means to those connections. To make a contribution as you listen to our brief offertory music, please click on the I Donation button in the upper right corner of your screen. You can refresh the donation button anytime by hovering your cursor over the upper right corner of the screen if you're on a computer or mobile device. You can also donate at uustpete.org under the Giving tab, or by sending a check to the church office. Many thanks.
Pray, written by Teresa Novak from With or Without Candlelight, a meditation anthology. Pray with me now, if you will. I think we need to pray. Pray with me now. Not out to some great intervener, a handsome stranger coming to the rescue. You don't have to barter your soul, your mind, your free and restless spirit. Pray with me now. We need to pray loudly sometimes, giving voice in word or gesture to the urgent fires within our hearts, screaming out, "Why this? How long?" Screaming out for help, for courage. Outrage rumbles through our veins, and the pulse of our prayer is ragged. Pray with me now, if you will. I think we need to pray. We need to pray softly sometimes, our silent bodies held still, a quiet hope rising to the wind, blowing about the world in wonder. Pray with me now. Pray silently or out loud. Our very prayers are an answer, the pulse of life, of hope in our oh so human hearts. May our prayers be heard.
I wonder as I wander out under the skies, how Jesus the Christ child did come for to die, for poor simple people like you and like I wonder as I wander out under the sky. When Mary birthed Jesus, 'twas in a cow's stall, with wise men and shepherds and angels and all. But high from the heavens a starlight did fall, and the promise of the ages it then did recall. If Jesus had wanted for any small thing, a star in the sky, or a bird on the wing, or all of God's creatures in heaven for to sing, he surely could have had it, for he was the King. I wonder as I wander.
Good morning. It's nice to be with you again virtually. Thank you for asking me to speak to you today. Lately, I've noticed that my mind is wandering. And I'm sure it's because of the pandemic, the presidential election, the social uprising, everything that's going on in our world today. But it reminded me of a t-shirt I used to wear. And on the front of it, it said, "All who wander are not lost." And I used to wear that a lot around my family of origin because I was the one of 6 children who left home at 17 to never return. And I would wear it in hopes that they might understand my wandering all over the country. While I reflected on why I've wandered for so many years, I have found that it's connected to my sense of wonder. While I'm wandering, I do wonder. The song that John sang is titled, "I Wonder as I Wander," and is sung every December in many Protestant churches across the nation who consider it a sacred song, usually sung during the season of Advent. Well, music has always been my inspiration for writing many sermons, and I remember the last congregation I served, we tried thematic programming, and the theme of wonder was that December, whatever year that was. And when I began to think about that service and the theme of wonder, what came immediately to my mind was not the song that John just sang. Instead, I thought of the song by the Monotones, which is a group in the late 50s. And I think it's titled, "I Wonder Who Wrote the Book of Love." I wonder who wrote the Book of Love. You may remember it, some of you. Now, I consider that song a secular one, even though it wonders about a book of love, albeit a non-tangible book of love. The chapter, it includes chapter by chapter instructions about what to do when you fall in love. So in contrast, the sacred song, "I Wonder as I Wander," wonders about something very different. So in my wandering state, you may think I'm clearly lost after juxtaposing those two musical pieces next to each other. But I do find worth and value in wondering about the differences and similarities of the sacred and the secular. Because I think it is not unlike how we live our lives during every month of any year. We know that December is filled with the sacred holy days of religions around the world. For example, today is the 3rd day of Hanukkah, and it's the 3rd Sunday of Advent. Parallel to those holy days are the holidays, understood by most as secular, where spending money and buying and receiving gifts, Santa Claus and reindeers, and all surrounded by thousands of sparkling lights everywhere we look. Well, lo and behold, my wandering led me directly to one of our founding Unitarian fathers, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote an essay called Self-Reliance. And from that essay, he said, "Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind." With that sentence, Emerson lays the groundwork for the way Unitarian Universalists think about the sacred today, the fact that we trust in our individual perceptions is foundational to our faith. At the same time, we realize that attitudes about the sacred are not entirely private. There's always a social aspect to them. Reverend Judith Mayer has written and challenged us when she wrote, "It is not enough to care only about what I hold to be sacred. To enter the realm of the sacred, even with the integrity of your own mind, is to experience a sensibility that humankind has protected and cultivated for thousands of years. We all possess the instinct to set aside something as sacred, to cherish it and protect it with our whole selves. We must make room in our world for others to do the same, even when we do not agree. The sacred is something we share, a bond that is varied in its expression but fundamental to our humanity." Well, whether one believes in a divinity or not, What is sacred is the relationship of all living things, each to the other and to the world which sustains us, and whatever violates that relation tends to violate the sacred as well. So I'd like to share with you where the integrity of my mind carried me when I began to wonder about living in a seemingly secular world during a sacred season of the year. I think it was after the horrific shootings at Pulse here in Florida when I read in the editorial section an article by Phil Zuckerman, who is a professor of sociobiology and secular studies at Claremont College. His editorial article was quite fascinating as he described the kind of thinking there is out there in the world that we've all heard about. It's among politicians and preachers for sure, who say the reason for all the mass shootings in this country is because the world has become more secular because we removed God from our schools. The theory being, if people become less religious, then society will decay, crime will skyrocket, violence will rise, and once civilized life will degenerate into immortality and depravity. The title of his editorial was "Don't Blame Secularism for Society's Ills." And he goes on to say, this way of thinking is an old, widespread notion, and it's demonstrably false. He suggests that if it were true that when belief in God weakens, societal well-being diminishes, then we wouldn't see abundant evidence. Then we would see abundant evidence, but we don't. And I would add, possibly not even during a pandemic. In fact, the professor says we find just the opposite. The societies that are considered the most religious tend to have the highest violent crime rates, while those in most secular societies, they tend to have the lowest. The conclusion of his article is that it is clear that a strong or increased presence of secularism is not the damaging threat to society so many continually claim to be. It seems it is the highly secularized countries that tend to fare the best in terms of crime rates, prosperity, and human rights. And the nations with the highest rates of religiosity tend to be the most problem-ridden in terms of violent crime rates, poverty, and high infant mortality. So I now wonder how the pandemic is affecting these countries and in America. I want to share a story with you. It's about a Mexican artist who wandered with wonder. His name is Pedro Reyes, and he was surrounded by a different kind of wonder, the wonder of horror and grief. In 2008, he lived in Mexico that had decades of violence, and he decided to go to one of the cities that is the home to the most powerful crime and drug cartels in Latin America, where hundreds had died. Surprisingly, with the blessing of the Mexican government, Reyes went on TV and spoke on the radio, inviting the citizens of that city to turn in their guns, no questions asked, in exchange for vouchers with which they could buy household appliances. The response was completely unexpected when semi-automatic weapons, rifles, pistols, and shotguns of all kinds were brought to him, over 1,500. And he then had an army tank crush them and a steamroller flatten them while the people watched with tears and cheering. He melted down the metal and made beautiful shovels. And he sent them all around the world to art museums and schools and campuses. And where the exhibit was shown, he requested the people of that city to plant 1,500 trees in return. The wanderings of this man inspired him to create another project entitled Imagine, calling people to trade in their guns once again. This time, more than 6,700 were turned in, and the metal was turned into musical instruments for like an orchestra, making lutes and harps and violins and clarinets. And I read where in all the beauty of the new instrument you would see, there was also the terror you'd see, because you could recognize that some pieces or shapes of a gun, like a trigger or the barrel or the magazine of a gun, were noticeable, and yet the guns were utterly transformed from the terrible to the beautiful. When hearing this story in my mind, I wondered about the sacred and secular joined together in one musical instrument, and I experienced a sense of hope with my wondering. Imagine the sacred and the secular wrapped into one flute or clarinet held in the hands of a child learning to play an instrument for the first time. And I wonder about the sacred and secular wrapped into one ordinary life, your life and my life. As Unitarian Universalists, we are privileged every day to see the sacred and the secular when we view them with wonder. Wonder is like looking through a multidimensional lens that broadens our understanding and opens us to the possibility to intersect with whatever and whoever is not like us. And you may wonder about the noise in the background, and it's my dog drinking water. While wandering about in our daily lives in the land of the free and the brave, we all have the capability to wonder, imagine, be curious about, question, be amazed, and we don't even have to go outside to gaze at the stars and moon. I do think we can find wonderment in ourselves and especially in each other, even during this year like no other. December is full of secular and sacred experiences that I hope you'll consider wondering about, if only for the pure wonder of what would happen if you didn't and what would happen if you did. I leave you with this question. Could wondering while we wander in unknown territories of the pandemic and everything else we're facing this year, could our wonder lead us to find a sense of hope? These are the closing words from Walt Whitman. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I sitting heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. If you find yourself wandering in this year's season of holidays and holy days, may you be filled with wonder and hope for all of humanity. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays.
Good morning. I'm Randy Nolan, a member of this congregation. This morning's reading is Love Abides, written by Barbara Pescan from her Book of Meditations, Morning Watch. Often we are found in our grief and comforted, calmed by some kindness, brought alive again by beauty that catches us undefended. Even when the sun is most thin and far, even at the hour the storm is at its height, we can go through renewal nests within sorrow. Love abides, even beyond anger, beyond death. We are held in an embrace, invisible but infinite, moving with all creation, between wholeness and fragmentation, moving always toward the one. Small joys and great sorrows pass, and we, with steps uncertain, move on to whatever is next. But continually seen, heard, held by life infinite and remote, intimate and abiding. Love, do not let us go. Amen.
As our service ends, we pass the flame of our chalice to each other as we say our closing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Thank you for joining us this morning. We invite you to stay tuned for our coffee hour, the address of which will follow on your screen. Have a good morning.
I'm Sally Carville.
I'm Toby Newcomb.
I'm Julie Newcomb. Blessed be.
Hi, this is Kathy Norris.